Hey guys, I'm going to go through ADSB really quickly. I'm just going to take a screen recording of my computer and just go through the PowerPoint that I'd be going with you if we were in class today. I'm going to try and keep it as brief as I can and still kind of get you the information that I feel you would need to know if you were going into your check ride today. This is getting a little bit more prevalent. There's some regulations that are going to take effect here pretty quick at the end of the year that you're going to need to be aware of. And I imagine that when you guys go to your instrument check rides, this is something that the examiner is going to start asking you about, and they're going to be asking about this stuff a little bit more heavily in the future. So I'll try to keep, like I said, I'll try to keep it brief, but still go over all the information that I feel you need to know. I can get this thing to go. If you want to read up on this, which I highly recommend you do, you need to go to AIM 4 Tech 5 Tech 7. That's the most current address in the 2019 AIM. Obviously this isn't a PDF, but it's a video. I put these out for your guys' benefit only, so I would appreciate it if you didn't send this to anyone without at least talking to me. There's multiple reasons that I don't want my work published online for everybody to use. Like I said, for your benefit and your benefit only. So with that, ADSB, it simply means automatic dependent surveillance broadcast. Automatic meaning that it's always working. Once you have the equipment installed, it's always working. The dependent part of it means that it's completely dependent on the global navigation satellite system, or more commonly known as GPS. Surveillance means that it provides surveillance-like abilities. Now that's kind of a two-way street, which is unique in the history of the NAS, the National Airspace System, is that the surveillance is now a two-way street. It's not just a surveillance type equipment that can be used by ATC. It's also available to be used by pilots. The broadcast, the B, simply means that it relies on standard radio waves to broadcast the information both to ATC and to other aircraft. ADSB is kind of the it's the foundation that is going to hold up the FAA's NEXTGEN program, which is their entire infrastructure overhaul of the National Airspace System. ADSB is only one part, but it's kind of the biggest part, and it's the part that is really going to affect you guys the most. So how it kind of works, you have equipment that is installed on the aircraft. Now, it talks to two different entities. Number one, it receives its information as far as where it is at, both lat and long and altitude-wise, by the GPS satellites. So kind of what we talked about last week in class, it uses that time-based information to figure out exactly where it is and its altitude above the ground. Now, that information is sent to other aircraft that are in the area, and it's also sent to air traffic control ground facilities. So ATC can see exactly where you're at, and other aircraft can see exactly where you're at. That's what I was talking about by that two-way street thing. This is just kind of a graphic of how it works. So, if we're this aircraft right here, we receive our information from the 24 satellites that are above us. Obviously WAAS is going to play into this too, and it's going to help. Now, that information is broadcast to these other aircraft. They can see exactly where we are, where we're going, how high we are. We can also, if we have the right equipment, we can see where they're at. So two-way street there. And both of these aircraft are simultaneously broadcasting their data to a ground station, which is eventually going to wind up at an air traffic controller's desk, and he's going to be able to see where everybody's at. So that's kind of the basics of how it works. We'll get into a little bit more specifics on it as far as frequencies and equipment types, but this is the basic idea that you need to be able to explain when you go to a check ride, and you sit down and you get one of those annoying all-encompassing questions like, okay, explain how does ADSB work. So this is the area of coverage. Now this was back in October 2015, and this is the most current map that they have. So pretty much everywhere in the continental United States you're going to be able to receive ADSB coverage. There's a few places up in Alaska that I think are still not covered, but these are kind of the middle of nowhere mountainous regions. So two different types that you need to be able to explain. So the first one is ADSB out. Okay, this is what is going to broadcast your information, your ground track, your heading, your altitude trend to other aircraft as well as to ATC. Now this is what's going to be required by January 1st, 2020. You're not required to have the ADSB in, but all the benefits from this come with ADSB in. So this type of equipment, you can't have ADSB in without ADSB out, so they kind of go one and one. The ADSB in broadcasts your information to other aircraft as well as ATC, but you also get information back. So you're able to see where other aircraft are, you're able to see their altitude, where they're going, sometimes even their tail number, depending on the type of equipment you have, things like that. There are some questions that you may get on prepware that have to do with the two different frequencies that ADSB operates on. What you really kind of need to know about it is, generally speaking, if you're operating above 18,000 feet MSL, you're on the 1090 megahertz equipment. Okay, now the ES there, kind of like what we talked about in class, that's the extended squitter, which means that the aircraft broadcasts its position every second rather than waiting on it to be cued by an ATC-based radar signal. Okay, this is what's going to be associated with your Mode C and your Mode S transponders, like what we have. Below 18,000 feet, you can use either or. Most people have the 1090 ES, but some transmitters operate on the 978 UAT, which is Universal Access Transceiver. Now, in all of our aircraft at TSTC, we have the Garmin 345 transponder, so it actually is capable of broadcasting and receiving on both. So in a practical sense, we really don't even have to worry about this. You're never going to be in a situation where you wouldn't be in the right place to receive other aircraft's data or to transmit to ATC, because it broadcasts on both. That's essentially what you need to know about it, that there's two different frequencies. Here's what they are. Generally speaking, this is where you're supposed to use them, and that the aircraft that we have with the Garmin 345 can actually use both of them. So January 1st, 2020, this is 91225. You have to have ADSB out installed. Again, you're not required to have ADSB in, but you also don't receive any of the benefits that we're about to talk about in a minute, like ADSB and FIS-B. You have to have it in all airspace where you would need a transponder right now. So Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Mode C, Vale, above 10,000 feet, excluding 2,500 AGL, things like that. Okay. All Robinson helicopters, kind of side note here, they're coming standard with ADSB out installed. I don't know about ADSB in. That's something you guys can look up on your own if you're curious. But pretty much every aircraft manufacturer, Cessna, Boeing, everybody is making ADSB out kind of standard on all the basic avionics packages. So some of the additional benefits that you get with the ADSB in, so you get the traffic displays and alerts, which you guys have probably noticed by now we have in our GPS systems. You get radar services or radar-like services from ATC, such as traffic separation. There's some specifics on that you'll need to read about in the AIM. We're not going to go over them too much, but you also get ADSB and FIS-B, which we'll talk about those. So here's kind of the standard format that Garmin-based GPS systems and displays format the traffic alert information. So you can kind of see, this person right here. So theirs is ground tracked with relation to north. So you can see the north arrow right there. All Garmin displays have the option to display your ground track or put the display in reference to your ground track or to north. You can customize that, but in this case, north is on the left side of the screen. This is the aircraft itself. That's when it highlights it yellow like that, you guys have probably seen that means an alert or a proximity alert. But this gentleman right here is at 3,000 feet. He's descending. That's indicated by the minus sign. This person right here is at 1,300 feet. He's climbing, or 1,300 feet above you, and he is climbing. You can see that by the plus symbol right there, and there's kind of his ground track. This guy right here is nearly coming head on at you. He's 500 feet below you, and the minus sign tells you he's descending, and it gives you his tail number as well. Some installation types don't give the tail number unless they're configured a certain way. Ours doesn't, but this particular GPS does. Now keep in mind, this is not for traffic avoidance. Okay, this is not a system like TCAS to where if it alerts you of a problem, you can deviate from an ATC directed clearance. That is not what this is. This is information and situational awareness only. So you've probably read, or you should have read in the regulations, that if you, in an emergency, if you have to move out of the way or do something to avoid a collision, something along that lines, you can do that. You can also do that if you have a TCAS alarm, okay, which basically this is not TCAS, and it says that several times in the AIM. So that's one question that an examiner might ask you is, does the traffic display that you get from your ADSB count as TCAS, which lets you avoid other traffic? And the answer is absolutely no. So just a heads up on that. FIS-B, Traffic Information Service Broadcast, you can kind of do the math on that. It's pretty self-explanatory. What this is a benefit to people who have ADSB in. When you're in an area where there's enough of the ground-based ATC infrastructure, you can actually see aircraft on your GPS that are not equipped with ADSB out. The way it works is the ATC radar sites automatically pick up where the aircraft is at using its normal mode, using the secondary radar principle, the mode C transponders, and then it codes that information and broadcasts it through ground antennas, which is then picked up by your receiver. Okay, this is only really available in the big cities. Before our aircraft had the ADSB in installed, we used to just have ADSB out. We installed it about 3 to 4 years ago, and then about 2 years ago we installed the ADSB in. Before we installed the ADSB in, whenever we would go up to Dallas, we would automatically start receiving information on where other traffic was through the FIS-B network. Again, it's advisory only. It's not the same thing as TCAS. So that's pretty much the gist of it. Again, if you want more information on that, it's 4TAC 5 TAC 8 in the AIM. Excuse me. Now, the last thing we're going to go over is FIS-B, Flight Information Service Broadcast. This is kind of nice because it gives you NEXTGEN radar on your GPS. It can also give you TFRs and NOTAMs if your GPS is configured correctly. It only operates on the 978 UAT only, so because we have that Garmin 345 transponder, we're also eligible to receive this. It's kind of nice for situational awareness. Obviously it doesn't count for a in-flight weather briefing that you could receive through a flight service station, but it's pretty good as far as situational awareness with the the NEXTGEN radar on it. The refresh rate is pretty slow, so if you really need time-sensitive information on where exactly a certain thunderstorm is or a certain cell is at, you're probably best off contacting an air traffic control facility that has radar in the area, or flight service station if you're in an area that has that kind of coverage. So that is pretty much it. As far as what an examiner would ask you, that is pretty much the scope of everything that I could really see him going over with you, and that's kind of what I would expect somebody who came into a stage 3 ground or an end of course to kind of know about it. So if you got any questions on it, just email me, and I'm going to go ahead and export this to a PDF and post it on Moodle as well, so that you can also use that.